Breakfast Call Dialogue, widening your horizons.
Hey, this is Arlene.
And this is Grace.
And with us is Azrul Khalib. As usual, you will be sharing with us together with another special guest. She's Arafah, Ambrose. Hi, both of you.
Hi.
Hi.
So today we are going to talk about something that is quite synonym to the Peninsula Malaysians. This is about racism. As you all know, there's a viral video that has been for quite a while yesterday in the social media made by Malaysia Mail Online about it's a social experiment on racism among Malaysians, and their findings were the Malaysians are not really that racist. In fact, they are not racist at all.
We are not.
But what do you think? First of all, what do you think of the viral video itself? What's your view on that?
Okay, my view on that is like, okay, I cried at the end of the video.
Yeah.
It was not touching. People just refuse to say those kind of words, those cruel words. So that's like you said, it has hope. Malaysia, we have hope. You know, for our future generation, we do have hope.
Mm-hmm. And with you, Azrul, you also have viewed the video.
Yeah, you know, I think for a lot of people looking at this video, it's having this effect that verifies and confirms what we've always believed in. I think is which the Malaysian people are not racist, you know, and it's true that you look at this video, it is a select group. It is not the pakcik-makciks or uncle or Leng Lais out there or some other, but certainly it does give us, as Arafat just mentioned, hope in the Malaysian people.
And Grace, you have watched it before.
I almost watched it, but in fact I didn't watch. I just loaded the video, but I'm just looking at this feedback after for those who watched this video. They actually said that Malaysians are not racist, except a small minority who do it for I don't know why. That's what the Saifuddin said.
Yeah.
And also some of people actually, it was really a heartwarming video.
It is.
Yes. They said it actually they actually broke into tears, some of them.
Like Arafah.
Yeah.
Just to give a bit of a background about what the video is all about. So Malay Mail Online did a social experiment. They fake an interview, and they invited a few people supposedly for an interview of a role, and the role's supposed to have some racist lines that they need to utter. And when it came to the lines where it was really racist against a certain race, all of them were taken aback. It's like, I'm not going to say that. And all of them expressed the same kind of disagreement towards those racist, those sort of racism. And the findings concluded that Malaysians are not really racist, in fact.
Well, you know, I think when you look at that video, right, and I'm sure Arafah would agree here, is that you look at the faces of these people the moment that these statements are put to them to say.
They were not happy.
Yeah, God, I think they were looks of like, disgust. What? They were startled, abhorrent, you know. Yeah, so so you know, instinctively, people are repelled against these statements, right, Arafah?
Yeah, that was what. Yeah, that's true.
And you know, Arafah comes from West Malaysia.
Yeah, I just want to give a bit of background. You are from Sabah.
Yeah, I'm from Sabah.
So Sabah have a different sort of social context compared to those Malaysian in the Peninsula Malaysia. And when it comes to Sabah, a lot of people would say that, oh, let's follow the Sabah model. You know, people are in peace, unity, and there's no such thing as race. People just see everyone as Sabahan, that's all. But when it comes to the context of Malaysia, I mean the overview, the larger picture, what do you think about what do you think Malaysians in general are all about? Are they really racist, or are they really prejudiced towards each other?
Okay, I have few friends who are actually racist. You know, they're racist towards other races. But I tell them, and these friends are not from Sabah, they're from KL. Yeah, I said, why
immediately disowned, I don't know you people.
Yeah, why are you guys like this? There's only 3 of you here, like Indian, Malay, and Chinese. In Sabah, we have more than 30 tribes, and we can live in harmony. I can make fun of my Chinese friend, I can make fun of my Indian friends from Sabah, without them getting really annoyed, But here, you have to watch what you say. Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's my point of view, that I think the fact that we have more diversity in Sabah makes us more unite. I'm not saying that we are not racist, but of course I do have racist friends from Sabah as well, But most of my racist friends comes from KL. I'm really, really sorry. I'm so
Azrul, we have to have a self-check of our own.
Well, this is just my point of view. After I arrived in Malaysia, this is a multi-ethnic country, and the racism here, I found that it's quite enriched in this country, and also it's also mentality of people and how the government is structured in Malaysia. And like you mentioned, I can see clearly in the KL, especially how people the mindset, especially how they and that they group together because they feel comfortable to talk together when it comes to same race. Yeah. So I don't know when it actually begin to develop.
That's a great question, because we were having a National Unity Grandwa forum the other day,
organized by ASLI.
And this question, I think, was put out there, and the reality is that when you go to primary school, you can go to secondary school, everybody is with everybody. Nobody gives a damn which race or ethnicity you're from. In fact, I think people just want to look cool and just want to do their studies, want to do their work. Really, they don't really care that much. But when they leave secondary school, they go into universities, or public universities, or private universities. Suddenly it's polarized. Suddenly everybody's clustered. Like they go into their cliques and communities. The Malays, Indians, Chinese.
But why is only happening in Peninsula, but not like in Sabah and Sarawak? I mean, if you are talking about public education, it is applied to the whole of Malaysia, not just Peninsula.
Yeah. Because I think Grace mentioned it, hinted at it briefly, is that the problem here is the policies that affect us, from education to the economics to political life. Almost everything in this country is infused with some ethnic tone. And the sad part of it is that I think Arafah mentioned it, is that, it's just this small group, really. It's not the rest of us. The rest of us just want to get on with our lives.
But there's a question that I wanna pose, because if it's just that small group of people, why it only affects the majority of Peninsula, but not the majority of Sabahan and Sarawak? Okay, I'm sure there are racist politicians everywhere, not just in Peninsula Malaysia.
But honestly, the reason primarily is because Peninsula politics dominates the political life of Malaysia. I mean, no offense, Arafah, but
I know.
When we talk about politics in this country, sometimes we don't even think that Sabah and Sarawak is part of this country. It's like, and maybe that's a good thing in a way, because if you're not infected by the stuff that's going on,
You know what you say is spot on. I still remember, like, whenever I hear people going back from Sabah to the Peninsula Malaysia, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm going back to Malaysia."
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. So there's even this mindset that it's different. It's a different country. But in a way, this is where I have Sabahan friends and Sarawakian friends who ask, what on earth is going on with you people in Peninsula? It's like some disease, It's like everybody keeps thinking only in ethnic terms. It's like, aku punya, kau punya, stuff like that. Whereas in Sabah and Sarawak, they say it's not even like this. We have pictures that are coming out from Sabah, for example, or Sarawak, where there there are people going to churches, celebrating people's weddings in churches, and they're going there and they're wearing tudung, and they're obviously Muslim,
it's all
etc.
good. It's not a big issue.
It's all good stuff, right? Yeah, but when these photos come out in Peninsula, everybody freaks out. Aneurysm, and somebody's having a fit somewhere and is foaming in the mouth, saying, "Oh, Muslims are being Christianized," etc. So
that's really stupid.
Exactly, I think that word is,
stupid.
Yeah, it's stupid, and the reality is that unfortunately, when it comes to politics, these small people have a big say in the way how these policies are polarized. And unfortunately, I have to say, Arafah, I'm sorry, but even with the large inclusion of West Malaysian politicians into the cabinet, for example, and into government, things don't seem to improve. I thought with more Sabahan and Sarawakian politicians into our government, maybe they'll do a little bit more good and in fact, Peninsula politics with some, good old West Malaysian common sense. But I don't see it.
Arafah, do you want to respond? Do you want to respond on this? Do you want to respond about how Sabahan, because you come from Sabah, view racism? How a typical Sabahan would view racism?
Okay, like the first time I arrived in KL, and one of these ladies said to me, a Malay lady, I'm sorry. So she said, "So how did you fly to Sabah?" I said, I took the plane. "Oh, aku ingat korang naik belon." I said, "What?" And she said, "Oh, are you guys still living on a tree and things like that?" I said, "No, we're not."
So offensive, man.
Yeah, I said no, but I can't blame them. But because when it comes to Sabah promoting our tourism, our Sabah place, they'll show that place, like the trees and everything.
The orangutan, yeah.
Oh, really?
Whatever. Yeah. So what I said to her, I said, "I've been to your place. Have you been to mine? So who's the bigger person here?" And she just kept quiet. So that's how I deal with that all the time. But can I emphasize on this one? Every time we fill up a form, right? There's this Melayu, you tick lah, either India, Melayu atau China. And then for us, it's still others, please specify. I kind of masih sedih at that part lah. I wish maybe they could change something on that, put kadazan or put iban. And then you put there sila nyatakan. So it's still kind of macam sedih sikit lah.
Can I just ask you a question, Arafah, on that point, right? How do you then respond to the National Registration Department's argument against that, where they say, if that's the case, then we're going to have 30 places in that ethnic mere column, because to take into consideration everybody lah, Kadazan, Bidayo, Iban, Orang Asal,
and there's already 30
different
tribes.
I know it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, so I just have to go with the flow.
No, but the reason why I bring it up is that Malaysians for Malaysia, which is a group of concerned Malaysians who are wanting to make change and change the narrative in this country, we're about to launch a campaign where we are going to say, for non-essential forms, for stuff like gym membership lah, survey mana-mana ke apa, instead of writing there, ticking the box saying you're Malay, Chinese, Indian, and unfortunately, Arafah, it seems like you're in the Dan Line category. Sila nyatakan. We're going to have a campaign where we're going to ask Malaysians to write in that Dan Line column Malaysian. So if it's non-essential, if it's not an official form where we don't really need to specify this, we're going to tell people, put there, change the way we look at these things by writing it there Malaysian, and we're going to start the campaign.
The worst thing is to have a form where you need to state your race when you want to seek for employment.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
Like it matters a lot, but that's the reality, right?
Yeah, that's the reality of it. I mean, for now, there's nothing much we can do about it. So maybe, hopefully, in the future, they're gonna take it into consideration.
No, but
Malaysia.
But this is where we are saying that honestly, we have to stand up and speak out on these issues, because they have to respond. The government has to respond to how we think. not the other way
Let's work
around.
for them, right?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of abuses when it comes to racial preferences, especially in housing, in employment, in other essential activities that we do. Where, in fact, it doesn't necessarily you need to state any of your background, not just race, but gender and other backgrounds.
What does race has to do with, I just don't get it. It's just the qualification in your resume. That's how it's supposed to work.
No, but
No, yeah,
yeah, but this is the thing that I think you touched on, is that when the official forms, when we are regimented, in fact, when you go into universities now, even if it's not a student organized activity, the university wants to put you into Malay, Chinese, Indian groups, and everybody wants to go to their respective clubs and societies. We need to be able to say to them, say to these people, say to the authorities, say to the student councils that this is not acceptable. We need to be able to educate ourselves and to be able to voice out and say, if we're talking about a future for Malaysia for the next 51 years, we need to be able to say we should start thinking like a Malaysian. Not Malay, not Chinese, not Indian, not lain-lain, but Malaysian. And I think it's, even though we point the finger at the government quite often, right, it does start with ourselves as well.
I want to ask Grace, because you are South Korean.
Yes.
And the South Korean identity is not really as pluralistic compared to the Malaysian identity. How do you view it as a South Korean?
Yeah, actually, this whole conversation got me really into really deep thinking right now. And then right now, the question in my mind is telling me, what is the right when it comes to Malaysian right? Because I've seen a lot, like Malays, they do shout for their rights. Indians, they shout for their own rights, and the same goes for Chinese. But I've never heard about the Malaysian rights.
Yeah.
It's really rare to hear coming from the one person. If that person is a Malay, then he will go for Malay right, which I asked him actually, where's Malaysian right? Where's your country's right? Why are you only talking about your own race only? You're Malaysians after all.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you bring it up.
And it's all segregated. You see, the different races have their own
The
rights.
political parties are formed in the same
that's
way.
when I talked about political party, the government itself.
We don't really talk about Malaysian rights.
Yeah.
And when people talk about rights, it's important because it's strongly connected to freedom, to democracy. Like when we think about freedom, we think about the freedom of our own community. Whether we have schools that cater to our own community, we have employment and other areas that caters to our own community, but we fail to see that what about rights and freedom that caters to all Malaysian? Is there any conversation that going on for such area?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said it quite often enough that what is good for one community is good for all. There should be no delineation with regards to who gets what right or what kind of privileges. And affirmative action should benefit those who are most in need. Very often whenever we talk about these issues, people bring up the issue of Indonesia. How Indonesia is so, one. If you go to Indonesia, right, and you go there during Hari Merdeka or some of their national events, it's amazing environment. Sometimes you yourself who are Malaysian, you feel like you want to be Indonesian,
I'm glad that you raised about their Merdeka Day. We had a conversation with an Indonesian youth during the Indonesia's Independence Day, and the interesting part is they always organize these community activities like just simple like competition, like for example, the guni, lari guni. What do you call
Jokowi.
it? Jokowi participated in it.
The guni sack, right?
Running sack or something like that. These are very simple community-based activities that they do to celebrate their Independence Day. But when it comes to Malaysia Day and Merdeka Day, we always ask what the government is doing for us, but we never ask like what we can do to enjoy ourselves.
I mean, unfortunately, we've grown up into a very prescriptive society. It's very paternalistic, where the government decides what is good and how it should be and how we should react. in a way, I've never been to North Korea, but this is probably...
She never been.
You've never been.
I can't.
But, this could be it, where, you expect a regimented society. But going back to Indonesia, Indonesia celebrates its oneness. At one point of time, I think it was Sukarno wanted to do this whole assimilasi exercise. Everybody had to be Indonesian, and it was a bad experiment.
And a Javanese sort of identity-based Indonesian.
Exactly. So what they were going for, which was not a good idea, was uniformity. Everybody had to be assimilated into one identity, one language. Even Chinese had to adopt names that were not their own. In their own right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in a way, people get confused in this country with that. They think this is the way it should be, that people should be like Malays, for example. People should act like Malays. People should dress like Malays in order to be Malaysian. And that's wrong.
And
wrong.
And for you, Arafah, living in Sabah, how do you feel? Probably in the era prior to 2008. How was Sabahan reaction when it comes to like Hari Merdeka or Hari Malaysia?
Oh yeah, we always say that. Oh, we haven't celebrated when like before they actually say that it's Hari Malaysia. It falls on the 16th of September, right? We all say, 31st August is not Hari Malaysia. It's it belongs to the peninsula. It's not our Merdeka Day, because our Merdeka Day falls on the 16th of September. But it wasn't a big issue. We still celebrate National Day, and we're still going to celebrate the 16th of September. That's how Sabahans are. We're just cool-headed people.
What are you saying, Arafah? Are you saying we're two not cool-headed people?
I don't know, but when I hang out with my Sabahan people, we're just like so cool. But sometimes when I hang out with my KL people, they're just so stressed out. I don't know why. I'm stressed out.
I understand Arafah is an entrepreneur. She has her own business, right? You have your own business, right, Arafah? And, And can I just ask you, right? Your business is here in Peninsula, or is it in Sabah?
It's in Peninsula.
Yeah, and
it's in KL. It's in Puchong, actually.
Oh, okay. So does ethnicity play any part at all in business?
No.
No, it doesn't, right?
No, it doesn't.
If you got money, you want to buy my stuff, then I'm going to accept you. I don't care what color of skin you have.
Yeah. They're just going to buy. As long as it looks good on them, they're just going to buy it.
So can you be successful without playing the ethnicity card?
No, yes, I can. I can be successful. Because for me, I'm just glad that for me the racism in Malaysia is not as bad as other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, we should still feel lucky that actually, even though I dream of going to New York, going to here and there, but at the end of the day, Malaysia is where home is, and I'm glad that I'm in Malaysia. Despite being, because I have few friends overseas, they said, "Oh, we are they're being other races over there are being racist over them being Malaysian." But for me, seriously, guys, Malaysia is where I'm going to live. I'm going to die. Seriously.
Wow, spoken like a true Malaysian.
Seriously.
Another area that I want to highlight is about how can we find a solution on this? Like for Peninsular Malaysia, should we study the Sabahan model, or should we look deep into our own issues and try to tackle it from the ground up? But we will answer that in a bit. Let's have a music break.
Voice of sharing, durian ASEAN.
ASEAN Breakfast Call Dialogue, widening your horizons.
Hi, this is Arlene. We are back again with discussion on racism in Malaysia from the point of view of West Malaysia, of course with us as well in East Malaysia. So I want to come back with the question that I posed earlier about the solution. Should we go towards the Sabah model, or should we look into our own historical issues and deal with it from the ground up? But before we answer that, maybe I want to ask you, Arafah, like,
Yeah.
how was life back then when you grew up in Sabah? How was it? How different was it?
Okay, when I grew up, everything was simple, and maybe because I grew up in a family where there's a lot of races. I also have families who are Chinese or Indians who are Muslims. So I don't see, maybe it's built in me that I choose not to see colors, I choose not to see races, I just see people. And my mom kept telling me that you should not see color, you should see people. So it's like a built-in thing. And growing up, like when I went to schools, right? When I was in primary school, I don't see my friend as Chinese or Indian and Malay. I just see them as my friends, where we go out together, we come home together. You know, so it's kind of sad now that it's on Facebook now that a kid as young as 11. There's one video I think about that has been removed from Facebook where she's a Malay kid, but she was racist, and that's not good. Maybe it all boils down from the parents. So please, parents, do not educate your children to hate.
She was
Just teach them
racist towards
to love
whom?
one another.
The
Was
kid,
other racist?
the kid in the YouTube that you mentioned, she was racist towards whom? I mean, what
Towards
was the
Chinese.
background?
She was Chinese.
Mhm.
So it can't. She can't like have that on her own, right? Maybe it's the parents that keep talking about Chinese and the Chinese neighbor or the Chinese uncle or whatsoever. So she was uttering all this like mata kepet.
Yeah. We also have the
Or
famous
whatever.
example of Kiki.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Kiki.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it all boils down to the parents. You should not educate your children to hate another race. Just teach them how to love.
But why Sabahan people do not think the way majority of the Peninsular Malaysian think when it comes to like race?
I don't know. We are just born like that. Seriously.
But I think Arafah, you just hinted at what makes Sabah different. The multi-ethnicity of families. You know,
Yeah, it was just-
Tunku Abdul Rahman actually said that he encouraged multi-ethnic marriages, meaning to say that
Yes.
we shouldn't inbreed basically amongst Malays, Malaysian. We should actually be inter-ethnic, because that is what makes us stronger. Maybe in the same way.
My family comes from a lot mixed marriage. I married a foreigner, and recently my cousin, she's Kadazan, but she married a Punjabi guy from Penang. So that is so cool.
Mm-mm.
That is just so cool because we welcome any as long as you are nice to us, you're nice to the family and everything. We
You
welcome
better.
you to the family.
But I'm trying to be devil's advocate here. As much
Okay.
as we want to promote like interfaith marriages or intercultural marriages
Mhm.
and having a more multi-ethnic families, but at the same time we have situation in the peninsula which is I think probably it is uniquely a Peninsular Malaysia issue, where you have a Chinese convert that is racist against his own race, and you have like people who are just switching identity to a certain race just because the person changed his religion.
No, but this is where it goes back to the issue that we raised very early on. It's institutional. There are too many institutional structures that exist today which encourages a form of unity which is not in celebration of each other's individual ethnic diversities or cultural diversities. It actually requires that we live within silos, ethnic silos, where we should be content just being in that silo, but we're supposed to be united somehow to be one people. In the past, maybe that was the way it should be, or worked, especially our political systems. But today, when we're talking about forging the next 51 years as Malaysia, we should be bold enough in taking down some of these institutions that have resulted in us living in mental ghettos, amongst ourselves. And I think there is a lot to learn from Sabah and Sarawak with regards to the future of this country. And we need to be bold enough to take down these institutional barriers. And maybe it's a good thing that Sabah and Sarawak hasn't had so much experience in ethnic tensions like Peninsula has gone through. Because there's so much baggage, that we are carrying about us. It's hard to move on,
The racial riot in 19 1969, May 13, actually carried the most baggage for Peninsular Malaysians, partly because the aftermath of the racial riot is not just, a clean up by the government, but a change of policies and a formation of stronger institution that divides people. For example, right after the racial riot, they actually revised the Sedition Act to put more clause in it, and they actually formed the Rukun Negara. They formed the NEP, the New Economic Policy, and these are areas where it somehow strengthens the silos within each communities.
No, but this is where you have to again look back at many of these structures and institutional mentality. Where did it come from? Again, it's quite right what you say, Arlene. Historically, these were born out of fear, insecurity, and mistrust to some extent in one another. I think Malaysia and Malaysians deserve better today. I think today we should, if we're going to be looking towards moving on to finding solutions, we should be able to move forward with confidence in each other, trust in each other, and most importantly, believe in a vision where instead of talking about Malay, Chinese, Indian, dan lain-lain, but talking about
saying one Malaysia, we are not practicing it.
I'm not saying this one Malaysia thing, but I'm talking about Bangsa Malaysia.
Yes,
Bangsa Malaysia together, because right now we have an opportunity.
But how can people move on when right smack in their face? I have friends moving into KL, and the first thing that they notice are like advertisement looking for when they are looking for job, they see that one of the criteria, you either have to be of a certain race or you have to know a certain language. When you are looking for house, they will categorize, are you a Muslim, or are you an Indian, or are you a Chinese? If you are, then you can stay with us. So it's hard to not be racist when you are living in a life where everything is divided.
No, it's exactly that. There are two approaches to this. One is through the law. The federal constitution says very clearly that it's prohibited for you to discriminate on the basis of ethnicity, race. Yet we are not challenging when we have these situations where people practice discrimination. We seem to accept it, we seem to tolerate it, and because, again, I go back to my earlier point, we are at fault here. Just as much as we want something different and we tell the government, you should do this, we ourselves are practicing discrimination. It starts with us. And the second part of it is, besides it being necessary for us to challenge through the courts and to enforce the federal constitution, our political leaders, our leaders, need to have the backbone and to have, I'm not going to say it on air, but basically be able to have the courage to stand up for the convictions which represent all Malaysians and not just their ethnic community. That's important. If you want to be Prime Minister, you're going to speak up for all Malaysians, not just for some ethnics or some other.
For you to bring up that point, what about the politicians in Sabah? Do they fight for a certain tribe's rights, or do they fight for Sabahan's rights?
Well, I don't want to talk about that. Seriously, but from where I come from, Penampang. Okay, so the member of parliament is the opposition, but he's doing a good job fighting for the rights of the Penampang people. So that's all I can say for now. I only can speak for Penampang, but I cannot speak for Kota Kinabalu or Tawau or Sandakan. But for Penampang, the MP for opposition is doing his job.
But that's exactly it. You're speaking not on the basis of what tribe or ethnicity is there. He's representing the area, the constituency.
Okay. Majority race in Penampang is Kadazan. So
Okay.
yes, fighting for the Kadazan,
Okay.
for our rights there.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
that's
that's all.
because he's representing the constituency. So
Yes.
yeah. But
Because I don't really know much about the politics in Sabah. Seriously, because I just don't care. Yeah.
Yeah,
Seriously, I'm very, very sorry. I come from a political family, but I'm very, very sorry. But I just don't care.
I find it to be very tricky when we all talk about the racism, unity, and all those things because I don't see any balance between racism and unity. That each race they want to preserve their own culture, language, all sorts of things that they can identify themselves as. But here we are talking about unity, and we gave the example of Indonesia. So to find a solution, right? How do we actually approach? Do we actually create a new culture, or do we set an example, like follow the example from Sabah or Indonesia? So how do we actually approach this? Because it comes to it involves a lot of areas: religion, language.
it goes back to the issue of silos that I mentioned earlier. Is that we need to be able to speak a common language when we talk about unity. Some people, especially those who are extremists and those who are of bigoted mind, have their own version of unity, which is you have to unite behind them. But when we talk about unity, the so-called moderates, progressives, we talk about people being able to celebrate their individual uniqueness within that particular community, but united as a people. So we think as Bangsa Malaysia, unified in that context, and not just within the ethnic. We're not imprisoned within just our ethnic group. We don't want to fall into the trap that Indonesia fell, which was unity equals uniformity, where you even are told to forget your own culture. We can move forward towards what Indonesia has actually now embraced, which is unity in diversity. Indonesia is a country that we have to learn from because they had a bitter experience with this whole thing, and we have our own experiences to learn from. So it's important right now, in order to forge ahead, we have to look at countries like Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, and the Philippines perhaps, to see what can be learned on how we can create a better future for all of us without having to go through the conflicts that they went through. It's important because Malaysia is a very fortunate country. It's not like all the countries around us which have gone through conflict after conflict and have had bitter memories of all that. We need to learn from their experiences, and we need to be open to that learning because sometimes
that's
it can be
a
quite
great
bad.
point. From what I see, when we talk about racism, we talk about unity, we always look at our own context, but we don't look at the larger Southeast Asian experiences. If you look at countries like Myanmar and Singapore, they are facing the exact same thing that we are facing. They are trying hard to find ways how to unite, but it's very hard because their countries are very diverse. Like you talk about Singapore, they have similar racial riot past as Malaysia, and they are also trying to integrate well the different minorities and the majority Chinese there. The same with Myanmar, where you have groups like the Rohingya that are being discriminated, and the civil society there is trying hard to fight for their rights so that they can be reintegrated to the Myanmar society. And if you look at the larger Southeast Asian experiences, probably Indonesia would be the best example, the best prime example, where you have different tribes, different cultures. You have a past that was really, really tainted. The Chinese were hugely being discriminated, and in fact were violently being persecuted.
Late 90s.
The same with religious sect like the Shia and the Ahmadiyya and other minorities. And I think if we look at in the ASEAN context, then we will see that unity is not something that we can gain overnight. It takes time.
Unity is not uniformity. Unity is diversity. When we talk about celebrating each other's uniqueness and being one people, it's recognizing that there is something different about the guy sitting next to you. It's not expecting the other person to adopt your culture, your language, your norms, and expect them
to convert
to convert to that. So it's not that. That's not unity.
So to conclude with our discussion today, I have a question to ask. I think I already asked Azrul on this. What is your ideal Malaysia, if there is one, and what is your message to our fellow Malaysians, Arafah?
What?
So what is your ideal Malaysia, and what is your message towards our fellow Malaysians in conjunction with the Malaysia Day?
Okay, to the yang tua-tua tu yang tak ada kerja, whatever it is, try to be more open-minded. Try not to be so focused on just one particular race, you know. And then please don't. Again, I'm going to emphasize on this. Don't educate your children to hate. Educate them to love one another and respect one another, despite the age, the race, and the religions or whatsoever. Just do that, and everything's going to be okay.
And fight for the Malaysian rights, right?
Yeah, fight towards the Malaysian right. Like I said, actually, I kind of like the term now, kita bangsa Malaysia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm going to use that hashtag bangsa Malaysia, hashtag saya bangsa Malaysia.
Yeah,
I'm going to
let's
use
do
that.
it.
Yeah, I'm going to start that. I'm going to do that. Yeah.
So anyway, that's all from us today. Thank you very much, and happy Malaysia Day soon.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Arafah. It's been great.
You're most welcome. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Welcome.
All right. Okay.